It's also a big source of carbon pollution. Texas and Louisiana produce more greenhouse gases than any other states. So, the very industries that contribute to global warming are threatened by the rising seas that climate change has brought about. That's especially true in southern Louisiana, with huge energy and petrochemical plants on land that's sinking into the Gulf of Mexico. Reed Fraser has our report.
Louisiana is a nexus of oil and gas activity. Oil and gas comes in from offshore and winds through a maze of pipelines along the bayous and marshes of its coast. Much of it comes here to the lowest reaches of the Mississippi River. The lower Mississippi is lined with refineries, petrochemical plants, and storage terminals. These plants make gasoline, the building blocks of plastics, rubber tires for our cars, and virtually every chemical that lives underneath our sinks. But this whole part of Louisiana is an increasingly dangerous place to live. Hurricanes have always been a threat to life here, but the situation is getting worse. To find out why, I came here to Chalmette, Louisiana, a few miles from the Gulf of Mexico.
Is there something I should know about walking in this muck?
Yeah. Step on the plants when you can.
Stephen Estopanol is a surveyor in southern Louisiana. He's wearing white rubber shrimping boots, standing in shin-deep water. We're standing in what looks like a pond next to a highway. He's poking through thick muck with a shovel.
There it is. Right there. What is that, 24 inches?
His shovel has struck an old road, a full 2 feet underwater, one he drove on as a teenager in the 60s. But over the years, water from the Gulf of Mexico kept getting onto the road, so the road had to be moved onto elevated ground a few feet over.
Hydraulically speaking, we're standing in the Gulf of Mexico right now.
When he was a boy, the road was flanked by trees and vegetation. Now, marsh grass and open water. You can see clear to New Orleans from here.
Now you can see one of the great cities of the world as it sinks below the sea.
He's not being melodramatic. This whole part of the state is sinking into the Gulf of Mexico. Why? Sea level rise is one factor. The world's oceans rose about 8 inches over the last 100 years. Another big reason is the land here is brand new, geologically speaking. It was brought by the Mississippi, overflowing its banks. But the modern Mississippi can't do that anymore. It's been tamed by dams and levees. So the delta is deprived of new sediment. So now, miles of thick delta sediments are compressing under their own weight. Gravity itself is pulling southern Louisiana down, just as the Gulf of Mexico is rising steadily. Again, Stephen Estopanol.
And it's causing all kinds of problems with the infrastructure. They have to build the roads up on hills. They have to build levees to keep the sea from coming in.
The wetlands here once served as a shield against hurricanes, but that shield is thinning. In its place, open water. Basically, the wall of green that once slowed storms down has become a runway for hurricanes.
Not only is there no more buffer, there's actually a mechanism for flow. There's actually a way for it to go sooner and bring more water further inland.
And that pathway for rushing water leads directly to refineries and chemical plants that line the Mississippi. Plants around the Gulf are fortifying levees and raising equipment off the ground to prepare for sea level rise. But you can't exactly pick up a refinery and move it, says Richard Metcalf. He's with the Louisiana Mid-Continent Oil and Gas Association.
It would cost about $3 billion to build a new refinery of a moderate size here in this geographic area.
Even if it wanted to relocate, the industry has to stay where it is, as close to the Gulf of Mexico as possible. That's where the oil and gas is, after all. Metcalf says the industry has learned how to better prepare for storms by keeping more liquids in storage tanks so they can't just float away and rupture, as happened at a refinery during Hurricane Katrina. But in the meantime, much of the infrastructure will remain in place, even if rising seas make it more costly to maintain. What does this mean for people who live near these plants? Russell Gelvin has lost 2 houses to hurricanes, once during Katrina and again last year to Hurricane Isaac. He brings me to see what's left of house number 2.
The house was 3 bedrooms. We had a formal dining room. The kitchen was here, utility room.
This was his house in Braithwaite Park. It's about 10 miles from New Orleans, and it's all of 3 feet above sea level. During Hurricane Isaac, water came up to his 2nd floor. He broke into the house from a boat through a bedroom window. About a day after the storm struck, he got word there had been a toxic spill in the area. 170,000 gallons of petrochemicals escaped into the floodwaters when the storm surge damaged storage tanks near his home. After months of gutting the house, he developed a strange condition on his lips. His wife felt sick whenever she came to the house, and his brother, who helped clear the house, had trouble breathing. Russell Galvin said some of his neighbors had similar problems.
We don't know what it's going to cause, you know. I mean, you can't dwell on it. Who knows? 10 years from now, I might come down with cancer. How are they going to prove it? I got it from here.
It's here in Louisiana where climate data reveal a particularly troubling story. According to the Union of Concerned Scientists, Louisiana's rate of relative sea level rise is the highest in the United States. Between rising seas and sinking land, the Gulf has gained 40 inches over the past 100 years here. This means that coming hurricane storm surges could punch the area even harder. By 2100, ocean levels on Louisiana's coast could rise by 2 feet or more. It's a daunting prognosis for the oil and gas industry and for Russell Galvin. But in spite of all that he's gone through, Galvin doesn't wish the industry would just go away. In fact, quite the contrary.
No, not really, because I know that, a lot of people don't realize Louisiana produces a lot of the petrochemicals, whether we're producing it, refining it, whether it's coming up the mouth of the river. A lot of people don't realize that the New Orleans and Louisiana area is a big boost for the economy.
Galvin now lives in a 3rd house. It's just downriver from the one that flooded during Katrina. Kids practice football in a nearby park on a weekday evening. Galvin's new house sits inside a brand new flood wall that's close to 30 feet tall. It's part of a huge federal levee system built to protect New Orleans. The wall protected the area during Hurricane Isaac, and I asked him if it makes him feel safe.
I feel safe. They saying this is the 100-year protection. Who's saying we might get that 500-year storm?
He's willing to live with the risks of storms and spills to stay here. But if there is another big one, say another Katrina, Russell Galvin says he'll leave. For Burn, I'm Reed Frazier.
You can join Reed on an aerial tour of southern Louisiana. That's at our website, burnenergyjournal.com. I'm Alex Chadwick, and coming up on Burn, one city actually is doing something to fight sea rise, maybe the richest city in the world, New York, New York. Next, on Burn, from Sound Vision Productions and American Public Media.
American icons move us profoundly.
Anyone can relate to a name. If you've given birth to a child, if you've held a baby in your arms, if you've baptized someone and say, I name you, this wall will break your heart.
From the Vietnam Veterans Memorial